14 are being warned by the police tonight that they are at risk of being murdered or seriously harmed, this programme has discovered, amid a shocking rise in the number of threat to life notices. Channel 4 News can reveal that the number of these notices has risen dramatically in many parts of the country. The Met, Britain's biggest police force, went from handing out 64 threat to life notices in 2014 to more than 160 last year, an increase of 160%. And they aren't the only ones. Bedfordshire, Hertfordshire and South Yorkshire all witnessed rises of between 100 and 150%. Simon Brown has been talking to some of the young people caught up in this crime nightmare.
This group of young men are identified by the Met's gangs database. They're under surveillance as part of a police operation against knives.
So the police came over and now some of their friends have been stopped and searched.
For over a year, Channel 4 News has been investigating the rise in knife violence. In that time, the police response has been to increase stop and search. The officers unearth a wad of cash.
You're not arrested, so why are you handcuffing?
Just before the search ends, insults are exchanged on both sides.
10 times. You come back on the back road 10 times.
The man on the left is a plainclothes officer.
You know your mum? I know my mum.
The police said that they've been following them by CCTV and they look like a large group. They said they had intelligence that one of them had a knife. They done a stop and search just over there. They didn't find anything.
The police are under pressure to get knives off of estates like this one in London, where the threat of violence is high. But it's not just here. FOI disclosures obtained by Channel 4 News from the Met, Hertfordshire, Bedfordshire and South Yorkshire police show a rise in threatened violence of between 100 and 160%. The rising threat of violence is very real. So real that the Met, Britain's biggest police force, has been forced to issue more threat to life notices. Now these are warnings that you or I could receive if the police have information that somebody wants to murder us, or at least cause severe harm. Many of the recipients of these notices are children. The youngest on record is 14. 22 of the 31 murdered teenagers across the country have been from this city. And thousands more here are living in fear.
I lived here from when I was born, so like 1 month old, until I was 15.
Temi Mwale is a social service provider and the big sister rolled into one on North London's Graham Park estate. Here she supports teenagers with threats against their lives.
Well, I'm particularly interested in what it's like to be a teenager scared.
I think that's exactly it. It's not just the feeling scared. There's like a culture of fear, there's a culture of anxiety. Young people feel under constant threat. And I think for a lot of adults in particular, but people in wider society that don't necessarily live in these violent environments, what they can't understand is how a young person can feel like every time they leave the house they're going to lose their life.
A lot of the solutions are geared around stop and search. Now for you, is that a solution?
I think with stop and search, we need to just look at it as what it is. It's a suppression tactic. The police want to take off weapons off the street. It's not going to solve everything, because ultimately if you've had 3 threats this week on your life, it doesn't matter how many knives I confiscate from you, you're going to still feel the threat, so you're still going to feel like you have to protect yourself. Teachers, youth workers, parents and the police can't protect these teenagers, so they feel like they only have each other and they only have themselves.
I mean, do you see those headlines as well?
Temi wants us to meet children as young as 13 who have never done anything wrong but have to navigate their teens in hostile territories.
But say if I'm with a group of boys, say us, if we was to go to another place and there was a gang, they would instantly ask, where are you from?
How do you know that?
Because they probably haven't seen our faces before, They don't know us, they don't know about how we are, so they ask where we're from. If you say the wrong answer or the right answer, yeah, most likely that's what's going to happen, or something bad.
So what would help? What for you would make the streets safer?
These clubs.
More police. Oh yeah.
Do you want more police on the streets?
It could help. I don't think it's gonna help much, but it could help.
If you had to, in one word, describe being a teenager in London, what word would you each use?
Hard.
Really hard as well, because it's not easy living the life of a teenager in London. bad things can happen to you. So, yeah.
And you fear bad things happening to you?
Yeah.
Those fears have been realised for the young man we're about to meet next. We can't reveal his identity because he's still school-aged. He was first attacked even before he became a teenager.
I've never been attacked by a knife before, so I'll be honest, I was scared. I was like about 12, 13.
You were 12 years old when you were first attacked?
Yeah.
When was the last time?
Last week.
What happened?
I was with my friend and we seen these 3 people in the car. They came out of the car with a baseball bat and a knife. It got to the point where I was running and they tried to hit me with a car.
This mere boy barely has facial hair, but he does have a threat to life notice from the police and a criminal record. He was and remains a child committing crimes on the behalf of grown men. What do they ask of you?
Just to walk with them, just to do everything with them.
Like what?
Like sell drugs, just old knives, everything. I wasn't the only one, that's the worst thing about it. I was actually one of the lucky ones. Most of them got stabbed.
You consider that you were maybe groomed?
Yeah, I would say that. In fact, that's exactly what it is. I was groomed. It got to the extent where I thought I was something that I wasn't. And then eventually it actually made me into that kind of person.
At what point do you feel like enough is enough, I need to get off the streets and completely draw a line under it and move away and start again? To what extent do you feel like you need to take ownership and responsibility over your own life?
Like, how would you expect me, a 16-year-old boy, to move away? Like, how? There's no one there. There's no social services. I went to the social services. They didn't want to know. So, where else am I supposed to turn to?
And do you expect to see 17? Do you expect to see 18? Do you expect to live?
I really hope to, but anything can happen. And that thought scares me that I might not even see 18.
And this is the tragedy which makes youth violence a matter of child protection. Young men and boys at the start of their lives are already anticipating the end.
Well, joining me now in the studio, the Labour MP Sarah Jones, who launched an all-party parliamentary group to tackle knife crime in September, and Rehman Chishti, a Conservative member of the Home Affairs Select Committee and former criminal barrister. Also with us, Jennifer Blake, a former gang member who founded Safe and Sound, a community project based in South London that tries to steer young people away from violence. Jennifer, let's start with that young man, teenager, child, in that report. He's trapped, he's scared, but he's committing crime. What are we supposed to do with him?
Again, we've got these young people that are in education, and we're talking about age. We've always talked about being able to do early intervention, and it's not being done. So we're looking at young people as young as 13 years old that are talking about fear, they're feeling trapped. Come on, if society doesn't see and hear that, then something is seriously wrong.
Rehman Chishti, is he a victim of grooming, or is he a young criminal who needs to be locked up?
Well, I would say there's a combination, a number of factors that have to be looked at. And I think what you have to look at, same as with people being sucked into extremism, some are disillusioned, some are disturbed, some are clearly dangerous, some want adventure, excitement. But I would totally agree with what Jennifer is saying. Early intervention is absolutely crucial. And linked to that, I think also you have to have the easy accessibility of knives, which is what something the government is trying now to do to address. But at the same time, is the legislative framework, in the right place to deal with prevention? I would say it is, but equally I would applaud the work that's been done by Sarah and your party parliamentary group, because there is no one answer. I think you've got to work across boundaries to ensure that what we can do is prevent young individuals carrying knives in the first place.
But this is a massive political failure, isn't it? Well, the number of children being told their lives are at risk is going up massively.
Well, I would say if you
not just in London, but around the country.
Sure, but I think what you have to do is, rather than making it a political issue, if you look at successive governments, Operation Blunt came into play in 2007, 2008, looking at the increase in the possession of knives. We've got Operation Sceptre at the moment. But I agree, look, more can be done, more should be done, because what we've got to do, like in my constituency, I've just lost a young teenager killed by another teenager, and that is completely unacceptable. I would work with anyone and every organisation to do everything we can to stop individuals carrying knives in the first place. But if they do, then on that basis, they should have the full thrust of the law thrown at them.
So that young man in the piece, if he's carrying a knife,
he should have the full force of the law thrown at him. That's what you're saying. He should be locked up.
Well, what I'm saying to you,
despite everything he said about being a victim.
Well, look, what I'm saying to you is, let's get it in context. Getting people prevented from carrying knives, early intervention is absolutely a must. However, if they carry knives then, on that basis, because of the consequences, they should have the full thrust law thrown at them.
Sarah Jones, again, let's take that example.
Yeah.
Is he a criminal or a victim?
I think it's very muddy waters. I mean, we know the police that are looking at some of these cases of kind of grooming young children through the Modern Slavery Act as well, are looking at ways of prosecuting the people who are grooming them. I mean, a young child who perhaps might have, issues with his home life, he perhaps might not be getting the best education, he might have mental health problems. That's a big issue that lots of different organisations that I've talked to say are part of this. At what point do we blame him? But I think the bigger issue...
But is Rehman Chishti right to say if he's found with a knife, the full force of the law should be thrown at him?
I think we need to look at the circumstances surrounding what has happened to him and why that's happened. But I think the bigger issue is that knife crime is increasing, not just in London, but across the whole of the UK. It's going up in Aberdeen, it's going up in Cardiff, it's going up around the whole of the country. And the age at which people are carrying knives is getting younger and younger and younger. There is an epidemic here that we need to tackle, and to take it seriously, we need to first tackle it at source, which is supporting those young people and getting them the choices and the options and the support they need, but also looking at it as a long-term problem. So today's 5-year-olds mustn't be tomorrow's teenage knife-carrying, gang members. We've got to be looking at...
Which at the moment, they're on a trajectory to be. There's no doubt about it, is there?
Yes, but it goes up and down. Knife crime goes up and down. It's an epidemic that we know how to tackle if we decide, as a society, that we care enough about it.
Jennifer Blake, the other thing that came out very clear in that report was the problem of policing with consent. The relationship between those young kids on the street and the plainclothes police who were stopping and searching them had completely broken down. How do you solve that?
Do you know what? I've always argued the fact that I'm not against stop and search. I am for it, because at the end of the day, if a police officer is going to stop a young man and he stopped him and he's got a knife, then do you know what? If it was John or Jim or whoever he was going to stab, he's alive now. But my issue is the way that the police conduct themselves when they do stop and search.
So it's not about the racial divide.
No,
because that's what Theresa May and the government have been saying. There are too many black people being stopped and searched. Well, that's not your.
Well, listen. Let me put it this way. That is not my problem. My problem is the fact that we can say, yes, stop and search. It's a fact that majority of young people stopped are black boys. Now, the majority of young people dying on our streets are black boys, and the majority of
they're all
young
black.
people,
actually, it should be young people this year, isn't it?
and the young people that are being the perpetrators are black boys. So at the end of the day, it's not a political issue, it's a community issue. And unless we come together as a community and political, then we are going to continue with this problem. But what's happening is that you've just got politicians and politics taking hold of this situation when they can't. It's our problem as a community.
Rehman Chishti, I mean, isn't there some confusion here? Because Theresa May wanted to tackle stop and search as a race discrimination issue and say the police have got to stop discriminating against black people, but here we have someone saying, look, this is a black problem.
Well, look, I think what you've got to do is stop and search reforms came into play in 2014. And if you look at 2011, 2010, stop and search went down, knife crime went down. To have the correlation between stop and search and prevention knife crime, I think is not there. But what I would agree with is with what the Prime Minister has said, is that stop and search was being used in an indiscriminate way, which was being led to people from the black community being targeted the most. That was wrong. But now it's a matter with the police on an operational basis. If they've got a reasonable excuse to suspect somebody for carrying a knife, then on that basis,
do you agree that conduct is a problem?
Well, in certain areas. Well, I think it's an operational matter for the police force, and I sit on the Home Affairs Select Committee. It's my job to ensure that police officers are applying the laws properly, effectively, and proportionately with the intelligence-based system.
Where do you stand on this question of stop and search and policing by consent?
Well,
it's absolutely at the heart of it.
Yeah, I have, and I've talked to Cressida Dick, was in front of the Home Affairs Select Committee last week, and I've talked to my own borough commander in Croydon, and it is a tool that is useful and that we need to use. But all the police that I've spoken to have said we cannot arrest our way out of this problem. And policing in London and across the country is under huge pressure. Cressida Dick last week at the Home Affairs Select Committee said she's going to have to cut police officer numbers by 10% over the next couple of years. You can't police effectively with that amount of resource cut, is what she basically said, and there's a much wider agenda here that we need to address as well.
Are police cuts going to be a problem with respect to this knife crime? Is that the issue?
That is not the issue, because at the end of the day, it's not an issue, because at the end of the day, when we look at police cuts, we're looking at the fact that you're going to have a police on every single corner. You're going to get crime. You're going to get young people being violent towards each other. So yes, cutting the police funds and so forth, it may cause the fact that you ain't got no more policing or enough policing on the street, but it's not going to stop what's happening. It's a bigger issue than that.
And that's where the resource really needs to be.
Yeah, and if you look at what happens to knife crime, it comes in big peaks, and what happens is you get a big peak, the police throw resources at it, it goes down because people get locked up, and then it goes back up again. You put people away. And
is that where we're going? We're going to be locking people up again?
Yeah, yes, that's what Operation Sector is all about. It's about doing massive searches for knives and arresting people, locking them up.
And that's what you want as well, isn't it?
But I think what it is, where Jennifer's absolutely right, is the change in culture, people carrying the knives in the early intervention, and that's why the government's given $500,000 to communities under this new consultation, because communities are at the front line.
And Jennifer, what you're saying, I suppose, is that if they do lock lots of people up, knife crime might come down, but it won't tackle the problem.
It's not going to tackle the problem, so they're flinging all these resources in, and we had a conversation earlier, and young people end up in A&E. And young people end up in prison. So you know what, if they're not dealing with this, we're going to get the young people in two places. We're going to get them in the prisons, and we're going to get them in A&E. Put the resources where these individual victims end up and some of the perpetrators end up. Put the resources in those places so that they can be worked on. But putting it in the policing, put it in politics, putting it all over the place, apart from where the problem actually